Nice to meet you, Mr. Xie.
Nice to meet you, Oliver.
Thank you for your time for coming in today. Now, I understand that you have been a lecturer and a drafter of legislation while you were in China attending Wuhan University Law School. You have also been a chairman of ACE Committee in Richmond, as well as a member in the Environmental Committee of Delta. I am correct?
Yes, so my pleasure to be here, and also thank you for sending me the questions, well-prepared questions with the insights there, well in advance.
I appreciate your thanks in this regard, so let's get started.
Good.
I understand that since that you've come from a Chinese law school and that's where the majority of your studies have taken place, the way that they do it over there is different from the way that law schools in Canada and the US do it. In Canada and the US, as you've probably been aware of when you were at Harvard, we use the JD as our primary degree, and this takes 7 years. But in China, even in one of your most prestigious law schools, that is Wuhan University Law School, things are probably done different. So can you explain how your studies proceeded and what kind of exams you took?
Yeah, sure. So there's similarities and also differences. So in China, law or legal education is divided into 3 levels. Undergraduate studies, which is equivalent to the JD, and master degree, equivalent to the LLM here, and then PhD, which is the same title as in here, we call it PhD. The difference is, in China, you don't need to have a bachelor degree before you enter legal studies. So you can just, after high school, as long as you pass the university admission exams, you may choose the field of legal studies. And then that takes about 4 years. You get a bachelor degree with a major in law. After that, if you pass the graduate student admission exam, then you may enter the master degree study in law. But you don't need to have an undergraduate degree in law to continue your master degree study in law. So in my case, that's the case. My undergraduate study was actually in environmental engineering, and then my master degree was in environmental law. I was admitted to PhD studies in private international law, but I never finished it.
Would you say that not finishing the PhD would be one of the big regrets of what you've done? Like, do you think that it would have been more worthwhile to consider this, or?
I think it's yes and no. Yes, you have a doctor degree, that's a good title. And in the same time, as long as you, at the introduction part, mentioned, you have the passion, you have the knowledge, you can always continue your study and continue the service. So as I have been served in the co-chair for the Environmental Protection Committee in City of Richmond for about 5 years. Now I serve in the Delta Environmental Advisory Committee for 2 years now. I'm still contributing. I don't need a PhD to do that.
Certainly true, and you've also, despite all the shifts that have gone on since you moved to Canada, you've definitely still maintained a strong position and a happy life, even though you've not necessarily been doing law. But moving back to law, as you mentioned that the JD is sort of like an undergraduate degree that requires 7 years here, 4 years of undergraduate, and then 3 years of study in law school.
True. That's why they call it doctors.
That's right. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry that I might have mistitled it, but there's something with it that in general people don't like about law, and it's that they don't get lots of formal experience when they're studying in law school. Like, for example, you can only do mock trials and not real trials, compared to in medical school where you can be operating on real people when you're still in medical school. Now, in China, I'm going to presume this might be different. What kind of opportunities to enhance your study did you have outside of your class?
So one comment is in North America during law school studies, you do get opportunities to practice in a sense, like you mentioned, case studies, mock trials. That's kind of practices. Similarly in China, during undergraduate studies, and opportunities kind of similar. So you study, in China, by the way, is more of a legislation-based legal system, versus here is a case law-based legal system. So in China, you learn all the cases, but also more focus on the legislations, acts, and the laws and the regulations, right? But once you promote it or continue into master and the PhD studies, then you may get exposed to a lot more opportunities. You may participate in your professor's research project. You may doing some field trip studies to trying to solve or provide some opinion about the issues that are going on in the societies, right? And you may also get involved in some policy analysis, and then kind of provide your opinions on that.
That certainly sounds fun, the sort of field trips you have. So describe what kind of field trips you went on and what did you find so engaging and informative about them?
Yeah, that's a good one. As I mentioned, my major about my master's degree study was in environmental protection. So my field trip, many of them, one is I visited the local environmental protection agencies or local EPAs. You trying to know what's happening. For example, some pollution accidents. Maybe they have some big policy changes. They want to have a environmental impact assessment for major projects. So you go there, you interview the people, you got first-hand knowledge and about what's happening, right? Another part is environmental protection also means we preserve the ecological diversified environment. So some of the best field trip will be you visit some prestigious kind of environment protected areas, ecologically diversified, like Emei-san, one of them is, so but a nature reservation area equivalent here, like in national park. So basically you want to you get a first hand, you enjoy the best view there, where you're trying to think about how we preserve them for the future generations.
That certainly sounds fun, but I can imagine that they don't have the time to haul you all the way to these national parks in essence. But you still have to spend time on campus, right? So what was campus life and campus atmosphere in China's Wuhan University Law School like?
That's a big one. So as a university and law school, yeah, students, we're serious. We're aiming at lawyers, like legal professionals. So we study very hard, that's for sure, and also need to pass the exam the way, right? And then also, just like any other university studies, you may get a lot of activities, dancings, parties, and then student unions, stuff like that. And these days, you have the volunteers, as mentioned previously. You may also get involved in your professor's research project. So yeah, that kind of culture is, we encourage the academic excellence. We also encourage to pursue the spirit of the law, which is fairness and justice.
Now, certainly from what you described, law school doesn't seem so much like a boring and dreary place anymore. Like, I had no idea what it would be like, but I thought it would be kind of more serious and less party-like than that. But
it's never party-like, but it's still serious study, but it's not as boring, right? So it's challenging, but not boring, put it that way.
Good to know. Now, moving on, I understand that your days as a student were limited, and you eventually became a lecturer, and you also went on to draft some environmental legislation for China. So would you like to first explain what teaching students was like, lecturing at Wuhan University Law School?
Sure. So teaching in law school is a challenging job. You got hundreds every year. You got a few hundreds, most talented people. One out of hundred or thousands selected top-notch students sit in the same room, and you're talking about legal stuff. So that's the challenging experience you can imagine. Even though you may say year over year, still same law, but the law itself evolves, and each student they may approaching with different perspective, right? So that's the beauty part as well.
Well, certainly law might not be 100% steady. I mean, because as your other job or your other one of the things that you did was helping to draft legislation, specifically environmental legislation for China. And how was that like?
Yeah, so when I was in the Wuhan University School of Law, I was actually working in the research institute, has a joint relationship with China's National Environmental Protection Agency, EPA equivalent to that. So I did get involved a lot of legislation, drafting, legal research, provide expert opinion in that. So that is a even more challenging job you can imagine, because legislation, you are writing laws which in turn may impact millions or even billions of people, right? So the challenging part is we need to protect the environment, reduce pollution, but at the same time we don't want to limit too much about economic development. China, the Chinese people still need the economical activities to enhance or improve our life qualities. And also, as a big country like in China, and legislation, it impact or has interest from multiple across industries, across departments, and how you're going to balance them, how you're going to facilitate the different perspective and different interests. And that's the challenging job for sure.
And yes, while both of them may be challenging, I can assume that maybe one of them is less challenging than the other, or maybe there was some other quality that, what would you say makes one of them more enjoyable than the other?
It's not that one more enjoyable than the other. It's just they're both challenging, but from different ways, right? So you interacting with the same group of students. That's maybe you build that relationships, and as a professor, you teach them, and you enjoy that. You see the student grows. You see them. They learn the knowledges, and later on they have a good career, and then come back and serve the society, which is achieve the goal I personally have passion on, right? On another side, legislation, same thing. You contributed to that. You have the law drafted, and you see the positive impact it generates, right? You see the people use the law you drafted to fight against injustice. You fight the pollution controls, apply to the incidents, and then pursue the compensation for the people getting impacted, which improve the environment quality, that kind of thing. So they're both good in a different way.
Certainly, you are right that it's hard to quantify which one is the better one indeed, but that's for the longest time, even after you left China, you haven't been into legal studies, but you've still maintained your interest in the environment.
That's correct.
Volunteering with some environmental initiatives that involve hands-on work, but also in more of a leadership role as a chairman of the ACE committee in Richmond, and also as a member of the environmental advisory committee in Delta.
That's true.
But you probably wouldn't be in these environmental committees if you didn't like environmental law in the beginning. And what was the reason that you were so inspired to take environmental law over some other fields?
So, me is a simple person. I grew up in the countryside, village back in China. And later on, along the way of pursuing education, I moved to the cities. So back in the childhood, I lived in the beautiful, naturally preserved environment, but later on, I observed economical activities really put a whole lot of damages to an environment. Right? So as a person who loves the beauty of nature, I was also asking myself, how can we pursue economic development at the same time we also want to preserve the natural environment so the future generations they can continue to enjoy the beautiful of the environment. So I guess that's the simple motivation. You love the nature, the beauty, and you want that kind of nature to be there.
Certainly very powerful and wise remarks into the nature of environment, no pun intended, in our lives today. You've certainly been a very motivating person, someone who's done a lot to shape societies, not only in
Try my
China
best.
and also here as well. So I thank you for all the work that you've done, but also for having the time to come and talk to me today. Enjoy your evening. Enjoy the nice weather. Thank you for your time.
My pleasure. So keep doing the great job and doing this in the school and also get involved in community. That's a good part.
Thank you very
you.
much.